Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Yud Gimel of Masechta Shabbis, Daf 113. Friends, a very beautiful Daf today, very beautiful. Kind of like in response to yesterday's very challenging Daf. Yesterday was oh my god, that was hard stuff. Well, today we got a fun little Daf, I think. I guess you guys will tell me. Anyways, what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to continue a little bit with the topic of knots that are mutter to tie. I know it's not the most gripping sugya, but don't worry, it's not so hard either. And then, then we get to tying a bucket with a weaver's rope. That's exciting stuff. Moving parts of a loom. Okay, then we get into folding clothing and cool Shabbos things and discussions of Rus, which is pretty cool, right? Then it's kind of this cool Shabbos-y kind of part to the daf, which is cool. Maybe even some stuff that you are familiar with. Alright, let's get started. We're going to start on Kuf Yud Beis Amud Beis. About 8 lines from the bottom. We have a little bit to do. I was just exhausted at the end of yesterday's daf, so we got a little bit to do on Kuf Yud Beis, but it moves. Friends, about 8 lines from the bottom. Vinodos Yain V'Shemen. So we say that you're allowed to tie skins of wine and oil on Shabbos, and it's permitted because it's not a kesher shel kayama. Pshita, obviously you can tie them. Lo tzricha de islay tarte one mao detema chada minay batulim mevatolo kamash malon. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is that, so first we say it's obvious. Of course you can tie these skins of wine. You're planning to open and close them, right? It's not like a barrel of wine where you're storing it for a long time. It's a place where a skin of wine. It's where everyone uses skins of wine, right? Probably not. But I think back then, that was kind of where you would take your wine, put in some kind of a wine skin, and you would drink it from there. So it's meant to be open. So we say the chiddush is, we're talking about a wine skin that has 2 ears. Yes, I know. Just like shoes and sandals have ears, well, apparently wine skins also have ears. But these ears are less complicated. Pashit, I guess these ears would be by way of these ears, you get the wine in and the wine out. So this particularly fancy model has 2 ears, and so you might think that, well, one of the ears, you could theoretically keep one of them tied for a while and just use the second one for taking in and out, in which case that would be a kesher shel kayama on the one that you're leaving shut. Kamash malan, don't worry about it. You can tie up these ears on your wine skins. And also, don't forget about your oil skins. Keder shel basar, if you have a pot with meat in it, and you put some kind of a cloth fabric on top of the pot, and you tie that. So we said that is also permitted because you're going to want to get whatever meat is, out of the pot. So pshita, obvious, right? It's obvious. Lo tzricha de isla shlacha mau de tema batulim mevatela kamash malan. So the chiddush over here is that even though this pot is some kind of a spout, and you might think that, well, I'm going to tie this cloth over the top of the pot, but then I'm planning to leave it there because there's a spout on the pot, and I can just pour out the contents of the pot by way of the spout, in which case whatever knot I'm using to tie this cloth to the pot will be a kesher shel kayama. So the Mishnah says, don't worry about that. You can tie the cloth to the pot. It is no big deal. Moving on. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Koshen v'chule. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that you are allowed to, if you have your place where the animals are, in the barn or the pen or the sty or the chavesvos, wherever it is. So then, if you want to tie some kind of a rope across the door of this barn or pen or sty or whatever it is, so you can do it. You could tie this rope across the doorway, and that's fine. It won't be kesher shel kayama because you're going to be opening it up anyways to let out the animals. So pshita, obviously you can tie this rope. So the tzricha de islay tarte isare. So the chiddush here is when you have 2 ropes. So Ma'odetema may have thought, chada minay batulim mevatel kamash malon. I might think that one of them you're just going to leave there, in which case it will be more of a long-term knot and it shouldn't be allowed. So kamash malon, that nonetheless you're allowed to tie these ropes on the door to this pen or sty or barn or whatever, and it's not a kesher shel kayama because the assumption is you're going to be opening up these knots to let out the animals. Amr of Yosef, Amr of Yehuda, Amr Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So it says of Yosef in the name of his teacher, Rabbi Yehuda, who says in the name of his teacher, Shmuel, that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that you're allowed to tie these, you're allowed to close block the door with these ropes for the animals not to get out. So Amalei Abaye, halacha mechlal de plige. Oh, so as we saw on Daf Kufvav Mud Beis, Abaye asks to his Rebbe Abaye asked his Rebbe of Yosef, he says, well, by saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that seems to imply that there's somebody who argues on him and would say that these ropes, you wouldn't be allowed to tie the ropes across the doorway. I mean, that doesn't seem to be the case. Why should tying these ropes be any different than tying tying the wineskin, any other kesher that isn't a kesher shakayama? So, Amalei, my nafka lachmina. So just like on Kuvav Mud Beis, Rabbi Yosef says, what's the big deal? The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. What's the big deal if it implies that other people argue on him or not? So Amalei, Gemara is more tetei. So Abaye gives the same answer as he gave on Kuvav Mud Beis, which is, what, is learning just like singing a song, that it doesn't necessarily need to make any sense or have any, it has to make sense, but doesn't necessarily need to have any reason, right? You just say the halacha is like so-and-so, and, even though, it's obvious, even though there's no machlokas, and you're just saying the halacha is like him anyways. So that was Abaye's objection, right? Meaning, just to clarify this point, meaning the fact that Rabbi Yosef says the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, right? So that implies that there's some kind of a machlokas going on, that somebody would argue on Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and say that you wouldn't be allowed to tie the door to this pen shut. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would be arguing and saying that you are allowed to close it shut. And therefore, Rabbi Yosef is clarifying that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Abaye says the fact of the matter is that nobody argues on Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Everyone agrees that you're allowed to close the door to this pen with a rope. So why do you have to say that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? So that was his kasha on Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef didn't really have a good answer for that. New Mishnah, koshin deli bifsakya avalo b'chevel. Okay, let's say you have what's it called? Pail for like a well of water. Okay, and you want to tie this, or a bucket, right? You want to tie this bucket by way of some kind of a rope. So you have a rope for the well, right? Right. So koshin deli bifsakya. So you'd be allowed to tie a bucket with some kind of like a belt, okay? Avalo b'chevel. But you can't use a rope, okay? A belt is going to be sort of temporary, because you're going to want to use the belt after all, whereas a rope would be more long-term. Rabbi Yehuda matir, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to use even a rope. We're going to have to explain why. Right? So Klalam Rabbi Yehuda has a general rule, Kol kesher she'einu shel kayama ein chayavin olav. Any knot that is not, a long-lasting permanent knot, ein chayavin olav. You're not chayav for it. That's actually interesting. Like on the one hand, he says Rabbi Yehuda matir, he says it's mutter. The other one says any kesher that isn't kesher shel kayama ein chayavin olav, which implies that you might not be chayav, but maybe it's patur av alaser. It's actually interesting. But over here, he seems to be saying that tying this bucket with a rope is mutter. Okay, fine. Let's see what's going on over here. Says the Gemara, chevel demai. What kind of rope is this? Ilem chevel de alma. If we're saying that it's just regular rope, the Chacham say that you're not allowed to tie a bucket to the well with a regular rope, and Rabbi Yehuda says that you are. Rabbi Yehuda matir? Kesher shekayamu. How could Rabbi Yehuda possibly say that you're allowed to tie this bucket to the well with a regular rope? It's pashit kesher shekayama. It's a permanent knot. Taking a rope, you're tying the bucket, you're hoping that it will never come out. So ella bechevel de garde. Rather, what must be is that we're talking about a weaver's rope. Some kind of rope that a weaver is going to use in his work when he's weaving. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says that it's mutter, because it's certainly not a kesher shel kayama, it's certainly not a permanent knot, since the weaver is going to need his rope. So he's going to have to undo it to then take it back. That's why Rabbi Yehuda says that it's permitted. But the Gemara asks, wait a second, So one second. So how do we explain this machlokas? So we're going to have to explain this machlokas as saying, so the Rabbanan say that you're not allowed to use a weaver's rope to tie this bucket to the well, because even though it's not a kesher shel kayama, but the logic, the reasoning must be that they're concerned that even though the weaver's rope won't be a kesher shel kayama, because he's going to need to take it back, but we're concerned that if you tie a knot with a weaver's rope, then you might end up tying a knot with a regular rope. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, and that's why they say it's not allowed, and Rabbi Yehuda says, we're not concerned, and therefore you're allowed to use the weaver's rope because it's not going to be a kesher shel kayama l'maisa. Okay. And we're not concerned that you're then going to use a regular rope, which would be a kesher shel kayama. V'raminu. We have a contradiction to this sort of explanation of the machlokas. Chevel dli shenifsak. If you have the rope of a bucket that snapped, okay, great. So you have some kind of bucket for a well, and it's suspended by a rope, and the rope snapped in half. How do you fix it? Lo ye kosher ela onvo. So the Chachamim say, don't tie it with like a permanent knot, but you can tie it in a bow. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda omer korich ala punda o psaki uvad shelo yanvenu. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, what you can do is, if you want to sort of fix the rope, so you can take a money belt, or you can take some kind of other belt, and you can, fasten it. You could basically, so you take the two halves of the rope's split in half. You take the two halves, you kind of put one part of the rope on top of the other part of the rope, then you take some kind of a belt and you wrap it around and secure it that way, but don't tie a knot, right? Maybe the belt has some kind of like, kind of like our belts, some kind of way to fasten it. We don't tie our belts in knots. We have some kind of fastening mechanism. So Rabbi Yehuda suggests that instead of tying it with a bow, okay, just take the two parts of this rope, take some kind of a belt, wrap it around it, and fasten it, and that's how you will connect it. Now, so what do we see? So we see that the Rabbanan over here seem to have no problem saying tie it in a bow, tie the broken rope in a bow, and then when they're not concerned that, well, if you tie it in this bow, which is not a kesher shel kayama, you might end up making a kesher shel kayama. They don't seem to have that issue. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying, hey, don't tie it in a bow, seemingly because, well, if you tie it in a bow, then you might end up tying a kesher shel kayama, and that's why he says instead, like, just kind of, take a belt and wrap up the two parts of the rope and hope that it stays in place. So what do we see? We see a machlokas. Why? Because on the one hand, we have our Mishnah, where the Rabbanan seem to be taking the more machmir route, where they're saying, don't tie this bucket to the well with a rope of weavers. Because if you use a rope of weavers, which won't be a kesher shel kayama, because you're going to undo it to take it back to your loom, we're concerned that you might use a regular rope, which would be a kesher shel kayama. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, we're not concerned. The fact of the matter is that the rope of the weavers is not a kesher shel kayama, and that's that. But we have this other place where we have machlokas, the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. When you have a rope of a bucket for a well that breaks in half, the Rabbanan seem to be the ones who are saying that you can tie it in a bow, and you don't have to be concerned about, well, maybe you'll end up making a kesher shel kayama. And Rabbi Yehuda is the one who's saying, no, don't tie it in a bow, seemingly because he's concerned that you might make a kesher shel kayama. Friends, oilam hafuch ra'isi. What's going on over here? Everything's backwards. Okay, so look what the Gemara answers, friends. Well, before it answers, it says, Kasha de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda, Kasha de Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. So first we say, no, so Rabbi Yehuda seems to be, saying the opposite thing in two places, and the Rabbanan seem to be saying the opposite thing in two places. So the Gemara answers, de Rabbanan ad Rabbanan lo kasha. It's no problem. We can explain why the Rabbanan say what they say in each context. Chevel b'chevel michalef, aniva b'kshir lo michalfa. The Rabbanan say, look, l'maise, a rope will be switched with a rope. Meaning, they're concerned that if you're allowed to secure this bucket to the well with a rope of weavers, well then you might say, meaning you won't be as attuned to the fact that it's a special kind of rope. You're going to say, I see, you're allowed to secure buckets to wells, I'll just go get my regular rope and secure the bucket to the well, right? So the Chacham are concerned that people are going to switch the chevel shel garde with the chevel de alma, that if you're allowed to secure the bucket to the well with a weaver's rope, well then you might not realize that it's only because it's a weaver's rope that it's allowed, and you might end up using your regular rope. However, in the second case, when the rope broke and now you want to tie it in a bow, the Chacham say, okay, everyone knows that a bow, a bow isn't exactly going to be the knot of choice to secure two halves of a broken rope. You're going to use some kind of other more secure knot. The fact that you're using a bow is pretty clear that, it's Shabbos, I shouldn't be making a kesher shel kayama. And they're saying that, right, that you're not gonna mess that one up. Then the Gemara says, the Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha. It's also no problem for Rabbi Yehuda. Hasam lo mishum de michalfa aniva b'kshira, ela aniva gufa kshirahi. Rabbi Yehuda holds that tying in a bow is actually tying. It's actually a kesher shel kayama. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says that in our Mishnah, when you're using a weaver's rope in order to tie this bucket, he says it's not a kesher shel kayama because the weaver is going to need to take back his rope for his work, and therefore, obviously, it's not going to be a permanent knot that he's going to make with it. However, when your regular rope breaks in half, if you were to tie that with a bow, that would actually be a kesher shel kayama, as far as Rabbi Yehuda is concerned. Or an actual kesher that you'd be chayav for. Although Rabbi Yehuda says in our Mishnah, right, any kesher that is not a kesher shel kayama, you wouldn't be chayav. But maybe it would be pater of alaster. So I'm not sure if Rabbi Yehuda is saying that, that the bow is a kesher shel kayama, and therefore you're chayav, or maybe he's just saying, or maybe saying even if it's not a kesher shel kayama, but it's still going to be pater of alaster, maybe. But either way, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that that a bow is a real knot, and for that reason, you're not allowed to do that. Does Rashi say anything? No, he doesn't. Okay, Seder. But Rabbi Yehuda says that in this case you wouldn't be able to tie a bow because a bow is an actual real knot. Fine. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav. Okay, says Rabbi Abba, in the name of Chia bar Ashi, in the name of Rav. Maybe Adam chevel mitoch beso v'kosho b'para uve'evus. So a person is allowed to take a rope from inside of his house, bring it outside, I guess to his chatzer, so it's not carrying or anything. And then he's allowed to tie one end to his cow, the other end to the trough, and it will secure the cow, by way of the rope to the trough, his feeding trough, and the cow will eat and stuff and also won't walk away. Fine. And we say that that's no problem, right? You don't have to be concerned about any kesher shel kayamas, or even like short-term keshers that would be pater of alaser. It's no problem. Because the assumption is you're going to tie the rope to the cow and to the trough, and then you're going to untie it from both. We have a kasha, Rabbi Acha Aricha, to Rabbi Acha bar Papa, Rabbi Abba. So Rabbi Acha Aricha, who is Rabbi Acha bar Papa, who we saw him yesterday, 2 days ago, the Maisa. So he asked the kasha on this, on Rabbi Abba, from what he just said. Chevel shebe'evos kosho b'para. So if you have a rope that is tied to a trough, so you can then tie it to the cow, right? Meaning, so you have one side that's already sort of a long-term knot that's connected to the trough. You can then connect the free side to the cow, and that's no problem. The assumption is that, the side that's connected to the trough is kind of there more long-term. You're then going to tie the cow to the free side, and then you're going to untie the cow, when it's done eating. And if you have a rope that is tied to a cow, so then you could take the free side and tie it to the trough for the same reason that it'll eat, and then when it's done eating, you'll then untie it from the trough, right? And we've already determined which is the permanent side. So, but do not take a rope from inside your house and then tie one end to the cow and the other end to the trough, because in that case, we're concerned that one of them is going to stay for a longer period of time, and it would be considered or not. It would be at least pater aval aser. So what do we say? On the one hand, we see Rabbi Abba in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Ashi in the name of Rab, who says that you're allowed to bring a rope from inside of your house and tie it to the cow and to the trough. On the other hand, we have a brisa that says that you're not allowed to do that. How do you resolve that? So asam chevel de alma, hacha chevel de garde. Oh, so the brisa which says that you're not allowed, that is talking about a regular rope. When Rabbi Abba is saying that you are allowed, that is a weaver's rope, and since the weaver is going to need his rope, so it's not going to be a kesher shel kayama. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, klei kevae muter l'tatzalan b'Shabbos. Okay, Rav Yehuda says in the name of his Rebbe Shmuel that weavers' items, weavers' vessels, stuff, you're allowed to move them on Shabbos. Okay? Because you can use them for other, right, as Rashi says, in Rashi Dibra Maskel muter l'taltalan. So the shnei akanim to the different reeds, okay. Oh, so it says the chazu akanim l'tash mishacher, because the reeds are usable for other things. Vashmeinan, and it's letting us know that in gardi makbid aleim, that the weaver isn't so makbid on these reeds. V'lohavi melachton le'iser. Therefore, it's not a kli shemelachton le'iser. It's a kli that you can use for multiple purposes, and therefore it's not muksa on Shabbos. Ba'u minei me Rabbi Yehuda. Now they asked Rabbi Yehuda, Koved ha'elyon v'koved ha'tachton, mau. Okay, what about the upper beam and the lower beam? So up until now we've been assuming that these looms were like kind of on the floor horizontally. So this is like a vertical kind of loom, all right? And then I guess there were different kinds of looms, and this is like a vertical standing up one. And there was like an upper beam and a lower beam that you would wrap the warp around. So can you move these upper and lower beams? So Amar Lu, he said to them, in velo v'rafi biyadeh, he said yes, no, he didn't really know the answer. Okay. Itmar, it was stated, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. So Rav Nachman says in the name of his Rebbe Shmuel, right? Rav Nachman and Rav Yehuda were both students of Shmuel. Klei kevae muter l'tatzalan b'Shabbos. So he says that you're allowed to move these weavers' vessels. Afilu koved ha'elyon v'koved ha'tachton. Even the upper beam and the lower beam. Okay, so Rav Nachman seems to say it's no problem to move these beams. Aval lo es ha'amudim, but not the pillars. So I guess, imagine this loom that stands vertically. So you have like two, pegs, pillars, things that are stuck into the ground. That's like sort of creates the basis for the loom. Then you have these, so they're standing vertically. Then you have these two horizontal beams that you would then wrap the warp around. Okay. So we're saying, what about those sort of vertical beams? So avalo es ha'amudim, but not those vertical beams. Amalei Rava Rav Nachman. Now Rava says to Rav Nachman was Rava's Rebbe, my shna amudim delo, how come you're not allowed to move the vertical beams? So ilem idikavid gumis, if you're going to say, well, you wouldn't be able to remove the vertical beams because they're going to make holes in the ground. But gumis memela kahavyon, but those holes in the ground that you would make by moving the vertical beams, those would just happen automatically. And as we're going to see in a second, and I think as we've seen before, that would be okay. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, hatomin lefes utznonos tachas hagefen, if a person were to put turnips and radishes in the ground underneath a grapevine, so im miktas olav migulin, as long as parts of the leaves of the turnip or of the radish are revealed, i.e. something you can hold on to and grab it and pull it out of the ground from, eino choshesh, he doesn't have to be concerned, lo mishum kilayim, not because of kilayim mixing grape seeds with like turnip or radish seeds. Lo mishum shvius, he doesn't have to be concerned about shmita, right? If it's Shemitah, he doesn't have to be, right? By putting these radishes and turnips in the ground, it's not like he's planting them. They're already they're already harvested. He's just like storing them in the ground to keep them cool or whatever. So he doesn't have to worry about planting during Shvius, during Shemitah. When he pulls them out of the ground, he doesn't have to take meiser from them. They've already had meiser, right? He's not planting these things, he's just storing them in the ground. Shabbis, and you can even pull them out of the ground on Shabbos, because it's not tlisha, and it's not harvesting, right? He was storing it in the ground, you can take them out of the ground. No, what about the fact that when he pulls these radishes and turnips out of the ground, he's going to be making a hole, and then maybe it'll come to even out the hole and it'll be boneh, or we said in the field, I think it would be what? Choresh, I think. So the Gemara says, "Besade lo asi lashvuye gumis, hacha bebayis asi lashvuye gumis." So the Gemara answers that the reason why that's meaning. Remember, Rava asked Rav Nachman, "What's the problem with moving these vertical beams of the loom? Are we concerned that you're going to make holes? Making holes doesn't seem to be an issue because we say that you can pull turnips and radishes out of the ground, so we're not concerned that it's going to make a hole." So Rav Nachman explains that it's different. That when it comes to turnips and radishes, that's in the field. In the field, you don't care if there are holes, you're not going to fill them in. Therefore, it's permitted. However, in your home, you do care if there are holes in the floor of your home, and therefore, you may come to fill in the holes, and therefore, you're not allowed to move the vertical beams. So Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Yehuda bar Levi, Klei keva'e, kigon kovid ha'elyon v'kovid ha'tachton ma'al l'tatlon b'Shabbos. So these weavers' utensils, like the upper beam and the lower beam, can you move them on Shabbos? Amrle ein metaltlin, matam lefisha ein nitalin. So Rabbi Yehuda bar Levi says you're not allowed to move the upper beam and the lower beam. He argues with Rav Nachman. And how come you're not allowed to move the upper beam and the lower beam? Lefnesha ein nitalin, because even during the week you don't move them because they're so heavy, so therefore it makes them muksa on Shabbos. Friends, now we get into some cool stuff about Shabbos. This might be stuff that like you've heard of somewhat already. Actually, more like a little bit further in the Gemara, but even the Mishnah is already some interesting stuff. So mekaplin es akelim afilu arba v'chamisha paimim. Okay, so the Mishnah says that you're allowed to fold up clothing on Shabbos, even 4 or 5 times. You can take off your clothing, fold it up, and then if you put them back on and then take them off again, you can fold them up again. It's no problem. Umatzin es amitos milei Shabbos l'Shabbos. Now, you're allowed to make your bed from Friday night for Shabbos morning. Aval lo mishabbos l'mutzai Shabbos. But let's say you take a nap in the afternoon, you wake up mamash right before the end of Shabbos. So don't make your bed because it's clear that you're only making your bed for after Shabbos. But when you wake up in the morning, you can make your bed because maybe you're going to want to use it, at some point during the rest of the day. Right? So the point being that as long as you're still going to use it on Shabbos, so then it's okay to do it. But if it's clear that what you're doing right now is for after Shabbos, so then don't do it. Rabbi Shmuel, says Rabbi Shmuel, mekaplin es hakelim, okay, you're allowed to fold up clothing, umatzin es hamitos, and you're allowed to make your bed, miyom HaKippurim l'Shabbos, from Yom Kippur to Shabbos, which is interesting, meaning if Yom Kippur falls out on a Friday, so you'd be able to fold your clothing and make your bed on Yom Kippur for Shabbos. Why is that interesting? I don't think that Yom Kippur can ever fall out on a Friday. There's a principle called Lo Adu Rosh. The Rosh Hashanah doesn't come out on Adu, which is Aleph Dalet Vav, on a Sunday, a Wednesday, or a Friday. Now, if Yom Kippur is on a Friday, then I believe that would mean that Rosh Hashanah would have been on a Wednesday. In Rosh Hashanah, it doesn't fall out on a Wednesday. But anyways, the Mishnah says if Yom Kippur falls out on a Friday, you can make your bed and you can fold your clothing from Shabbos to Yom Kippur. Fine. Now, if you have like the fats of korbanos from Shabbos that was Friday, they can be brought on Yom Kippur if Yom Kippur is Sunday, which is also interesting because I don't think Yom Kippur would ever be Sunday for that same principle. Because if Yom Kippur is Sunday, that means Rosh Hashanah was a Friday. We don't do Rosh Hashanah on Friday. Anyways, Avalo shel Yom Kippurim be Shabbos. But if Yom Kippur falls out on a Friday, you wouldn't offer the fats on the Mizbeach on Shabbos. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer Omer, not Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Kiva Omer says, Rabbi Kiva, lo shel Shabbos craven b'Yom Kippurim, v'lo shel Yom Kippurim craven b'Shabbos. Rabbi Kiva says that, no, you can't do any of these things, right? Any fats from Yom Kippur, from Shabbos, can't be brought on Yom Kippur. Any fats from Yom Kippur can't be brought on Shabbos. Seder, right? So Rabbi Shmuel said that the fats of Shabbos can be offered on Yom Kippur, that falls out on a Sunday, but not the fats of Yom Kippur that falls on a Friday on Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva says you can't do either fats from one day to the other. Fine. Says the Gemara, they say in the Besmedrash of Rabbi Yanai, Lo shanu ela be'adam echad. So when we say that you're allowed to fold up clothing, that's only one person. One person's allowed to fold up clothing. But you can't have two people folding up the clothing, because the two people, if they fold up the clothing, then they might come to flatten out creases and stuff, and that would be misaken, that would be fixing the shirt. We don't want that. And even if it's one person, he's only allowed to fold up new clothing which don't have wrinkles and creases. But if they're older clothing that have wrinkles and creases, then he wouldn't be allowed to, because we're concerned that he's gonna, get rid of the wrinkles and creases and fix the shirt. Okay, and even if they are new clothing, you can only fold up white clothing, but for some reason, colored clothing, memela, when you fold them, it will be fixing them somehow. But white clothing would be okay to fold them. And also when we say that you're allowed to fold up new white clothing, that is only as long as you don't have any other clothing that you can wear. But if you have other clothing that you can wear, well then just wear the other clothing. Okay? Or at least maybe like if you have other clothing to wear, then it's not clear that you're folding up this clothing for Shabbos, right? Because maybe the assumption is you're going to wear other clothing, so why are you folding up this clothing? Maybe it's for after Shabbos. I don't know. So Tana shel Beis Rabban Gamliel lo hayu makaplim klei lavan shelayin mipnei shayu layin lahachlif. So it was Tana, but I said that by Rabban Gamliel's house, they wouldn't fold up their white clothing on Shabbos because they had even extra white clothing. Because white clothing was fancier clothing. Because not everybody had extra fancy white clothing. By Rabban Gamliel's house, Baruch Hashem, they had extra fancy white clothing, so they wouldn't fold up even their white clothing on Shabbos, since they had other white clothing that they could wear. Fine. Amar Rav Huna, said Rav Huna, Im yesh lo lahachlif yachlif. Interesting. So Rav Huna says, if you have two pairs of clothing, well then you should change them for Shabbos. Right? If you have two pairs of clothing, so you wear one during the week, and then change your clothing for Shabbos. But if all you have is one pair of clothing, well then, one set of clothing, well then, yishalshal b'vgadav, what you should do is that when Shabbos comes, you should try to pull down your clothing a little bit to make it a little bit longer, because that's more mechubad to have longer clothing. That's what the fancy people do. They have longer clothing because they don't have to go out and work and do so much, so they can just kind of have longer clothing that can even get on the floor. It's really not that big of a deal. So therefore, if you only have one pair of clothing, you should try to kind of make them a little bit longer and fancier for Shabbos. Maskef Rav Safra. Rav Safra asked, but doesn't it look a shtickle haughty? What? Shabbos, he's gonna, be all fancy, and he's gonna pull down his clothes to make them longer, and be some kind of haughty, fancy dude. So the Gemara answers, "Kevin l'chol yoma lo ka'avid ve'idna u'du ka'avid lo mischazik krimus rucha." So Rav Huna says, nah, it's not really that big of a deal, because since during the week, he doesn't do this. He's only doing it because it's Shabbos. So that would be acceptable. Says the pasuk in Yeshaya. No, what does the pasuk say in Yeshaya? Im tashiv mishabbas raglecha. Right? If you stop walking too far and traveling because it's Shabbos, asos chafatzecha b'yom kadshe, and you stop doing your own desires and work on my holy day, v'karasel Shabbos oneg, and you call Shabbos a delight, l'kadosh Hashem mechubad, to the holy God, or to God you call honorable, v'chibato me'asos derchecha, and you honor it from going in your ways, from finding your objects and things and your speech. So we're gonna kind of go through this pasuk and discuss different parts of it. So the pasuk says, "V'chibadto me'asos derchecha." If you honor Shabbos from going in your ways, v'chibadto. What does it mean to honor it? Shlo yeh mabushcha shel Shabbos k'mabushcha shel chol. The clothing that you wear on Shabbos shouldn't be like the clothing that you wear during the week. You should have special clothing for Shabbos. How do we know that? V'chibadto, to honor it, means clothing. V'chiyad Rabbi Yochanan kar lemani machbedusai. Like Rabbi Yochanan would call his clothing his honor. As Rashi says, shemachavdim ba'alein. that clothing gives honor to the people who wear them, right? If you wear fancy clothing, you're a fancy person, right? The clothing that you wear represents who you are. So, or it gives you honor, depending on how you wear it. So we see v'chibadto means that you should wear special clothing on Shabbos. I feel like that's like a Breslover kind of thing. I feel like Reb Nachman, I don't know, I haven't learned Breslov Chassidus in a while, but I feel like Reb Nachman kind of quotes this thing about clothing being honor. And he quotes this Gemara from Rabbi Yochanan that he would call his clothing his honor. Me'asos raglecha, from going in your ways, shelo yehi hiluchecha shel Shabbos ki hiluchecha shel chol. Hiluchach shel Shabbos ki hiluchach shel chol. That the way that you walk, the manner in which you walk on Shabbos, should be different than the manner in which you walk during the week. Oh. And the Gemara is going to explain what that means. Mimtzo chefzecha, from finding your sort of business dealings, your desires, your things. Chafatzecha asurin chefze shemayim mutarin. Your chafatzim, your business dealings and things like that would not be allowed. But chefze shemayim, things like, pledging tzedakah, things like that, that would be permitted. Vidaber davar, and speaking. Shlei diburcha shel Shabbos ki diburcha shel chol. That which you speak about on Shabbos shouldn't be like that which you speak about during the week. You should try to avoid speaking about business and things. Davar, dibur asar, hirur mutter. Right? So, speaking these things is asar, but you could think about it. If you want to think about business in Yonim, that would be acceptable. Says the Gemara, Bishlama kulu l'chaye. So the Gemara says, I understand everything in this drash. I understand different clothing. I understand to speak a different way. Great. What does it mean that I should walk differently on Shabbos than I should walk during the week? So what if he's walking on Shabbos and he gets to a little stream of water? How should he go about getting to the other side? So if you would be able to cross this stream, right, by sort of extending your first foot to the other side of the stream while your back foot is still on the first side of the stream, i.e., you're able to stand on both sides of the stream and have your feet planted on the ground at the same time, mutter, then you'd be allowed to cross this stream. Vimlav aser, if you would have to sort of jump over the stream, well then you wouldn't be able to cross this stream because we don't want you to, be taking such large steps on Shabbos. Okay? Maskefla Rava, heichi liavid. Rava says, but then what are you going to do? How are you going to get to the other side of the stream? Leikif, kamafish bilucha. What, you should go around the stream, walk all the way around the stream to avoid crossing it? Well, then you're walking a lot. We don't want you to walk too far on Shabbos. Li'aver, should he just walk through the stream? Just like, so that way he can take smaller steps, but he's going to have to walk through the water. Zimrin demitafsan mane maya v'asi lidei schita. Well, then his clothing might get soaked with water and he's going to come to wring it out, to do schita, to remove the water from the clothing. Ella biha keven delo efshar shapidami. No, so rather in this example, when you're walking and you encounter a stream of water, you would be allowed to jump over the water. That is no problem. It's better than walking through the water or walking around the water. So Ella kedaba mine Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. Rather, it's like Rabbi asked Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. What did he ask him? Ma lifso psiagasa b'Shabbos. Rabbi asked Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, are you allowed to take large steps on Shabbos, big geshmaka steps on Shabbos? Amrle v'chi b'chol mihutra. Right? So one second. So Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi responds to Rabbi. He says, what are you asking? It's not like during the week you're allowed to take large steps. Shani Omer, because I'll say, if you take steps that are too large, it reduces 1/500th of a person's vision. And you don't want to lose 1/500th of your vision. But don't worry, you get it back when you make Kiddush on Friday night. So don't worry about it. But the fact of the matter is that you shouldn't really be taking Psiya Gasa during the week either, I guess. Okay? Alright. So, but I guess that still it means that on Shabbos you probably still shouldn't walk big steps, I guess. Because I think we're saying that you can go through that stream I think maybe on Shabbos means, don't run, don't take too big steps, I guess. I don't know. What else does it mean? Rabbi Shema Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi asked Rabbi Shema Rabbi Yossi, Ma'u lechol adama b'Shabbos? Can I eat dirt on Shabbos? No, I'm just kidding. So Rabbi asked Rabbi Shema Rabbi Yossi, can you eat like some kind of earthenware on Shabbos? Which also doesn't really sound like much of an upgrade. But I guess that they used to eat like earthenware or something for some kind of like healing purpose. I guess they thought that it would like help with some kind of a disease. Yikes. That doesn't sound fun. To which Rabbi Shema Rabbi Yossi says, well, are you allowed to eat pottery during the week? Shani Omer, Av B'chol Asum Pneishu Malke. I'll say that you're not even allowed to eat pottery during the week because it's gonna make you sick. So Amr Bi'ami Kol Ochel Me'afra Shel Bavel Kilu Ochel Mibsar Avosav. Now says Rabbi Ami, anybody who eats from the dirt of Bavel, it says if he's eating from the flesh of his fathers. Yuck. I wouldn't want to do that. Those who say not much better. It says if you're eating like creepy crawly things, yuck. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, that it says by the Mabul that when the Eibishter destroyed the world with a Mabul, so it says that he what's it called? Like disintegrated or like melted, decomposed all of the Yakum, like all of the creations, all of the living things, into the boiling, scalding waters of the Mabul. Shinar. Why is Bavel called Shinar? Because all of the things that died in the Mabul got like shaken, like sent over there. It says why is Bavel called Mitzula? Because all of the dead things of the Mabul kind of sunk over there. So apparently, like the earth of Bavel, which is I guess Iraq, is filled of all the dead things of the Mabul. So you don't want to eat that. But now the Gemara says, 1 second. One second. How can you say that it's like you're eating creepy, crawly, wormy things, but they certainly like disintegrated in the hot water, so you're not like actually eating like creepy, crawly, wormy things. So the Malke, so the Gemara answers, well, Kevan the Malke gazu berabanan. So rather, no, but since eating the earth of Bavel is bad for you, so the Rabbanan said like don't do it. Because there was a fellow who ate some dirt, and he also ate cress. So basically, he set up like a little garden in his tummy. And then he grew like a little patch of cress inside of his body, and it was a shtickle constricted inside over there, and it was growing, and it grew into his heart, and unfortunately the fellow expired. It was very, very sad. Now says the pasuk in Rus, so Naomi said to Rus, she was sort of coaching her on how she should approach Boaz. And she says, V'rachatz v'sach v'samtzim lo saich, right? That you will wash yourself, you will put on oils, and you will put on clothing. Amr Belazar, Elu begadim shel Shabbos. Says Belazar, Naomi was instructing Rus to put on Shabbos clothing. Right? And as Rashi says, like, obviously she wasn't going to go naked. Why did she have to say that you're going to put on your clothing? Of course she's going to put on clothing. No, I mean special clothing, Shabbos clothing. Says the pasuk, Tein l'chacham v'yechkam od. If you give wisdom to a wise person, they will take it and do even more wise things. Amar Belazar, Zo Rus HaMoaviyah u'Shmuel HaRamati. Says Belazar, this is a reference to Rus the Moabite and Shmuel, Hilu the Navi Shmuel. Rus, what's the example of Rus where she took some wisdom and made it even greater? De'ilu Naomi ka'amrala v'achatz v'sach v'samtzim l'sayich alayich v'yaradet agoren. Because Naomi told Rus that you will wash up, you will put on oils, and you will put on your clothing, and you will go down to the granary. V'ilu b'didaksiv, what did Rus actually do? V'ateret agoren v'hadar v'taz kol asher tzivata chamosa. but rather Rus first went down to the granary and then she got dressed and did all that stuff because she didn't want that on the way, if she was already all dressed up and going down to the granary, that anybody should think, God forbid, that that anybody should think that she's a prostitute. Fine. Shmuel, and where do we see by Shmuel that he kind of took some wisdom that was offered to him and ran with it and did a shtickle better? The ilu Eli ka'amarle, Eli told Shmuel, basically what happened was Shmuel was hearing God calling him, and God kept on saying, Shmuel, Shmuel. And right, my little neighbor, I have a little neighbor friend, his name is Oriya, and he's probably like maybe 5 years old. And there's these other neighbor friends downstairs, and one of them is called Shmuel. And this little boy, Oriya, he goes, Shmuel! And he calls out to his neighbor friend Shmuel. That's what he does. Anyways, so God was calling out to Shmuel too. And he goes, Shmuel! And then Shmuel doesn't know what's going on because he's a little kid. So he goes to Eli and he says like, Eli, are you calling me? Who's calling me? Somebody's calling me. And Eli realized that it was God calling out to Shmuel. So Eli says, so what's the advice that Eli told Shmuel when Shmuel came to him saying, hey, I'm hearing somebody calling me. So Shchav, lie down, vayayim yikra elecha, that if God will call out to you, v'amarta, you'll say, Daber Hashem ki shomea avdecha. Speak God because your servant is listening. V'ilu b'didei ksiv, what did Shmuel actually do? Ksiv it says, Vayavo Hashem, that God came by Yisatzev, and he stood, Vayikra kifam b'fam Shmuel Shmuel, and he called out, like earlier, he said, Shmuel Shmuel. Vayomer Shmuel, Daber ki shomea avdecha, and Shmuel said, speak, because your servant is listening, but he didn't say, right, V'lo Amar Daber Hashem, he didn't say, speak God, because your servant is listening. And Rashi says, at the end of the Rashi, the B'maskal Shmuel, he says, V'hu lo ratza la'azkir Hashem, Shema ein zo shchina. Shmuel didn't want to mention, say, Daber Hashem, didn't want to mention God's name, because maybe it wasn't, he didn't want to risk saying God's name in vain, because, just in case it wasn't God. And I guess that was, his concern was honorable. Okay. Vatelech vatavo vatlaket basade. So, Rus went, and she came, and she gathered in the field. Amar Rabbi Elazar sheholcha uvas at shematzu bnei adam amuganin leilech. That what does it mean? Vatelech vatavo. She went and she came. It means that she went and she came a few times. She searched around until she found a field where she felt that the people were appropriate. That these are people that she wanted to be with. Amuganin leilech imayim, that it was fit to go with them. Vayomer Boaz lenaro anitzav ala kotzim l'miya naira azos. So now Boaz got to his field, and there were all the harvesters there, and there was a manager of the harvesters, and among them also was Rus, who was trying to forage some things. So Boaz came to the field, and he said to his manager, he says, "L'miya na'ira azos, who is this woman that's here at the field?" Was that sort of normal, or is that really befitting, or something that Boaz would do, that he would just see a woman and say, hey, who's this woman? Whenever there's a woman around, he asks his manager, hey, who's this woman? So, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Dvar Chochma Ra'aba. No, Boaz saw something special in Rus. He saw wisdom in Rus. What did he see? Shnei Shibolin Lakta, Shlosha Shibolin Eina Lakta. That if she found 2 stalks lying on the floor, she would take that. But if there were 3 stalks lying on the floor, she would leave it, right? Because we know that when it comes to leket, right? Leket, there's leket, shechicha, and peah. So if there are what's it called? Sheaves of wheat or whatever, stalks of wheat that fall on the floor, so a poor person is allowed to pick it up. However, there's a limit, right? If there are 2 stalks of wheat on the floor, the ani could pick it up, the poor person can pick it up. But if there are 3, then you have to leave that for the field owner. And Boaz saw that Rus knew the halachas of leket, and she was only picking up if there were 2 stalks, but if there were 3, she was leaving it. B'masnisa Tana, we learn in a brisa, dvar tznius ra'aba, that Boaz saw tznius, modesty in her ways. Omdos me'umad noflos miyushav. That if she was harvesting grain that was standing up, right, because that would be shichacha, anything that the harvesters forgot. So if there was 2 stalks that they forgot, she would take those. And if there were also stalks lying on the ground, she would take those. So the ones that were standing, the ones that were still connected to the ground, she would take those while she was standing. But if they were lying on the ground, rather than bending over to pick them up, she would sit down to pick them up. Okay. And then Boaz says to Rus, and you shall stick together with my maidens. So it says here l'dabek, but the Agosabach says l'daber im anashim. Would Boaz just speak to random women? So Amar Abelazar came in the Chaza Vatishak Orpa lachamosa v'rus davkaba, that since Boaz saw that, because remember what happened. What was the story of Rus? Basically, there was Naomi. Naomi was a widow, and she had these two sons. Who was it? Elimelech. And who was this second one? I can't remember. Or maybe Elimelech was her husband, and then she had two kids. I don't remember. But Rus and Orpah were her daughters-in-law, and like all the men in Naomi's life like died. Her husband died, her kids died, if I'm not mistaken. So they were basically stuck, just the three of them, right? Naomi and Orpah, right? Her two daughter-in-laws, Orpah and Rus. So Naomi said, look, leave me and just go get remarried. Orpah said okay, and she left, but Rus davkaba, Rus stayed with Naomi. So since Boaz saw that Rus stayed with Naomi, and Naomi was also Boaz's cousin, so therefore he saw that there was something special about Rus and that he could reach out to her. Amar shari le'edbukeba, it's permitted to stick to her, to connect with her. Vayomer la Boaz le'esa ochel goshi halom, and then Boaz said to Rus when they were eating, come to me, come to here. Amar Belazar, said Belazar, remez ramaz la, that Boaz was giving her a sign. Asida malchus beis David lot says mimech, that the kingship, the kingdom of David is going to come from you. Dichsiv be halom, that it says by David halom, just like Boaz said to Rus, goshi halom. Where does it say by David halom? Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Vayavu Amelech David Vayeshev Lifnei Hashem, that the King David came and he sat before God. Vayomer, and he said, Mi anochi Hashem Elokim, mi am I, God, mi beisi, and who is my house? Ki evi asani ad halom, that you have brought me ad halom until now. So therefore, Boaz was alluding to Rus that she will the kingship of David will come from her. V'tavad pitech b'chometz, and you will dip your bread in vinegar. Amar Belazar, said Belazar, mikan she'achometz yafel l'sharav. So we see that vinegar is good for heat waves. Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmani Amar, remez ramaz la asid ben latzes mimech shemaisav koshin kachometz umanu menashe. Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmani said that the allusion of vinegar is that there's going to be somebody who comes from you that his deeds are very difficult, very hard, very sharp and bitter, like vinegar, and that is Menashe. Vateshev mitzada kotzrim, and she sat next to the harvesters, meaning Boaz was there, and then there were the harvesters, and then Rus kind of sat on the other side of the harvesters. Amar Belazar mitzad akotzrim v'lo besoch akotzrim, that she sat on the other side of the kotzrim, not among the kotzrim. Remez ramaz la. So this setup was Boaz showing her Shasida Malchus bez David shetischalek, that in the future the kingship of David is going to be divided up. Vayitzbat la koli vatochal, and he sort of extended to her, I think, roasted stuff, and she ate. Amar Belazar vatochal b'mei David, she ate. That's a reference to the days of David. Vatisba, she was satisfied. That's a reference b'mei Shlomo, to the days of Shlomo. Vatosar, and there was leftovers. B'mei Chizkiah, and there was surplus. That is referring to the days of Chizkiah. V'ikidam, to those who say vatochal, she ate. B'mei David uvimei Shlomo. Vatisba, she was satisfied. B'mei Chizkiah. Vatosar, there was surplus. B'mei Rebbe. Damar Mar. Aharure de Rebbe have a osir mishvor malka, that the stable boy in the house of Rebbe was wealthier than Shvor Malka, the king of Persia. It's like they say that it's a fact, that the graffiti artist from the early days of Facebook, he took stock instead of payment, and that stock was worth $200 million. He's like the stable boy in the house of Rebbe. B'masnisa Tana, we learn in the Brisa, Vatocha ba'olam hazeh, vatizba limos HaMashiach, vatosulach lasilavo, that she ate in olam hazeh, and she was satisfied during the days of Mashiach, and there will be surplus in the world, right? Lasilavo, in the future. I guess that's like Gan Eden or something. I mean, if we're talking about Limos HaMashiach, so what's lasilavo? I guess like Gan Eden. Okay, friends, that was Shabbos Daf Kuf Gimel. It was cool, right? You agree, right? Right. Okay, so says, okay, so what did we talk about? So at the beginning we talked about some more of those knots that are mutter to tie and untie on Shabbos, because they're not a kesher shel kayama. Then we talked about, tying a bucket on a well. And basically we said you wouldn't be allowed to use a regular rope, because that would be kesher shel kayama, because you want the bucket to stay as long as you can. But the question is, can you tie it with a weaver's rope? So the Rabbanan say that you cannot tie the bucket with a weaver's rope, because we're concerned that if you use a weaver's rope, then you might end up using a regular rope. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we're not concerned about any gezeras. You can use a weaver's rope, because he's going to have to take it later, because he's going to need it for his loom. We talked about moving parts of the loom. We said that you're allowed to move different parts of the loom on Shabbos. Rabbi Nachman said you're even allowed to move the upper beam and the lower beam, just not the vertical beams, because that will make holes, and you might come to fill in those holes. Rabbi Yochanan, though, says that you're allowed to use that, right? That you're not even allowed to move the upper beam and the lower beams, because you don't move them during the week because they're too heavy. Fine. We talked about folding clothing, right? The idea is basically, as long as you're not going to like flatten out the creases, which would be misakin, like fixing the clothing, as long as you're not concerned about fixing creases, so then it would be okay. But also, that's also if you don't have replacements. If you have replacements, so then don't fold up your clothing. Okay. Then we learned about like cool Shabbos things, like that whole pasuk of tashiv, mishabbas, raglecha, right? About wearing special clothing on Shabbos, speaking differently on Shabbos, walking differently on Shabbos. And then we got into the whole limud about Rus and all this, all these interesting things about the experience of Rus with Boaz and that initial relationship there. Friends, have an awesome, awesome day, and peace out.